Who better to talk about tortured Leafs defenseman than tortured Leafs fan and the host of Overdrive TSN 1050, Bryan Hayes, who now joins us. Bryan, there's always one lightning rod on the Toronto Maple Leafs, and almost always it's a defenseman. Why does the Leaf fan base constantly need someone to go after, or is it just because the Leafs D-men make it easy on them?
Yeah, that's a part of it, for sure, Geno. We're talking about a team that's never had a Norris winner, right? So Leaf fans are constantly talking about that, absolutely. But in truth, it's a generational thing. It starts from one generation and it gets passed to the next. I remember my dad growing up telling me about whipping boys in the 60s and 70s. It was a dark childhood, Geno. It was a very dark childhood. But this is a white-collar town that loves a blue-collar player. And they've been seeking that #1 stud, big kind of Scott Stevens type defenseman for a long, long time. And it snowballs. You get a defenseman who struggles, and then all of a sudden, one Leaf fan starts focusing on it, the other, the media picks up on it, and we're talking a long lineage. Like, obviously, we saw in the piece, Todd Gill, Larry Murphy, famous here in Toronto for that.
You bring up Larry Murphy. Let me follow up on that. Murph got chewed up and spit out in this town. Then he leaves and becomes a hero, wins a Stanley Cup. Is this city of Toronto just chewing these guys up prematurely?
Yes, in many cases, they absolutely are. It's irrational. I'm not saying that this is a rational thought. A lot of times, these players get basically run out of town unfairly, Larry Murphy being the best example. Todd Gill was a good player. Dion Phaneuf was a good player. Aki Berg, who we're watching right behind us here, and I love that picture of Aki, was what he was. He didn't show up expecting to be a top 4 guy. He was a third-pairing defenseman on a good team.
So just too much expectation on guys?
Sometimes it's expectations, but also it happens to be certain characteristics. If you're soft defensively, if you're beating the corners, if you're beating the front of the net, if you're slow, right? These are attributes that pop up, and a lot of times these players we're talking about, they actually exist in their DNA in terms of hockey players. So Leaf fans jump on it, it snowballs, it gets out of control.
All right, you were talking about Aki. I want to talk about the guy over my shoulder. The newest whipping boy in Toronto is John Klingberg. Usually it takes sustained poor play to cause fans to turn on him. In this case, it's only been a dozen games. Are the fans being unnecessarily harsh on this guy too soon?
No, I don't think they are based on his play. Right, this might be the earliest whipping boy status we've seen, Geno, but this is a scenario that I think is very rare in sports and rare in hockey, is that you have an old school blue-collar eye test crowd with a new school modern analytic crowd, and they're meeting in the middle, and they're agreeing that John Klingberg is not playing well enough. Like, he's really struggled since he got here. He's a veteran. He deserves more time. He deserves a chance to get out of it. But let's be honest, his head coach isn't his biggest fan right now either. I'm not sure he's going to play the next time they play, Geno.
That's a great point. Leaf fans may have to pick a new target for tomorrow night specifically. Klingberg was the 7th defenseman in practice on Thursday and could actually, as you mentioned, be a healthy scratch against the Flames.